and make sure this sucker's streaming. Have you ever used Restream at all?
I've been guests on it, but yeah.
Yeah, got it. Did you start your podcast or
No,
still
we
have your
never. We
podcast
hadn't.
going?
No.
Got to get your podcast going, man.
Yeah, just amongst 17 other things.
Probably. But with that too, I know you're busy out there skiing and everything, and I'm super grateful for your time and coming and joining and mentoring us today. And I'd say as a quick way to get started, there's much to brag about. Please brag about yourself. Give us a 60-second, background of your career and everything that led you to where you're at today.
My name is Jamie Shanks. I'm the CEO of a company called Sales for Life, and we founded and pioneered a topic called social selling. That word, and we're a sales training company. We're a professional services firm that's tech-enabled, that enables companies all around the world. And it started with social selling that evolved into digital and modern selling. And now this world of virtual selling has emerged. So we've always been part of that, of that change. But ultimately, the problem that we solve is self-generated pipeline. And we self-generated pipeline specifically at scale because we service the global mid-market and the global enterprise. And I'm here on Lake Simcoe, which is a large lake an hour north of Toronto, Canada. I'm a Canadian. And we have been living on the lake, and I've been skiing on that boat, for the last 6 months.
Living the life
until the ice broke. Yeah,
I know. I check. I follow you on Instagram and peek into there from time to time, and it's like every other snap or story is just you just hanging out on the boat. It's just awesome. It looks like a blast.
It is fantastic, and we were talking off air before this. It is a bit of a gift to the children too. My kids are 6 and 7. And, I call my son the cottage kid. He hasn't had a shirt on in like 3 months. He walks around barefoot. He's tall and blonde hair, and that's all he does is fish and water ski.
That's awesome. Best way to grow up. My parents did that for me too. Lots of camping, lots of outdoors. And I think it does a lot for your personality, I too think, just to be connected with nature as much. So yeah, I think it's a great thing. Is the water there like freezing? Like every time you get in, it's like a cringe or?
Well, so it depends on where in the world you're from. So the warmest this will get is 75 Fahrenheit.
Oh.
So to me, I can swim in the 60s Fahrenheit pretty normally. And I have wetsuits and dry suits when it's in the 50s.
Well, Colorado, we got lakes out here that are like right above freezing, 40 degrees.
Exactly.
So that sounds reasonable.
But if you talk for somebody from, say, Dallas, they freak out. They're like, what are you talking about, 75?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the whole, where did your, what led you to social selling and what was it in your career that kind of the light bulb went out and created this kind of, so many people use it now and you really did. It's funny. I just want to touch on this is like when I was in college, I read your book and I actually did a research paper around your book. And so you've been really at this game for a while where people are just now slowly starting to adopt and get and like understand these strategies. How did you catch on to this so early?
I was 30 or 31 years old. I was a VP of sales at a SaaS software company in Toronto that was a startup from incubation to we brought it to 3 million ARR. It was now turning profit every month. And at that point, the company, I recognized I could move on, and I had learned all these skills specifically around prospecting. I was just really good at business development. I wanted to teach. I wanted to build a consulting firm to teach people how to prospect. So in 2010, shook the hand of the CEO I was working for, and I said, I'm out, and I'm going to start a firm. Little did I know how impossibly hard it is starting a professional services firm. And for about 2 years, I just got battered around by the ocean. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to run the business, barely survived. But long and the short, and there's a lot of stories in between, but about 2 years in, the company was basically done. I wasn't making any money. And it was in the pits of hell, basically, that I started to self-discover that there was a way to prospect outside of what I had known to do with telephone and email, and I could reverse engineer LinkedIn and Twitter to do so. And at the time, there was no courseware on the topic. The word social selling didn't exist yet. And I would sit around and reverse engineer LinkedIn as if it was from the mindset of I was going to use phone and email. And I discovered these hacks, and I started documenting these hacks. And then I started showing sales organizations around the Toronto region for free. I was like, here's what I'm doing. And people would start booking meetings. Light bulb went off when I recognized I could monetize this into a business.
That's wild. How what are some of the bigger mistakes that, looking back over the years in your career and starting your business, if you're mentoring, I'm a younger millennial and a lot of other millennials listening to this, what are some of the mistakes you might go back and change in building a business?
Oh, mistakes in building a business. It's funny because I started documenting those last year, knowing that building a company now with intent is that I'm growing it to have a compelling event, to be able to monetize your business at some point. It is an illiquid asset until you can create capital from it. And so along that journey, I've been trying to go back in time and document the last 10 years. As I started, I'll talk to you about something, and maybe this will trigger one of the smartest things I did, and then some of the pitfalls and challenges. One of the best things that I ever did was that I created a proof of concept, and I gave it away for free to the first 10 companies that would take me in. And I had them sign an actual statement of work. It was a real statement of work, except the price was zero. And that statement of work stipulated that if I achieved a certain result, that they had to be able to give me references and testimonials to whomever called, even if it was their direct competitor. And because they knew what I was doing from our training perspective, in fact, reverse engineering your own company to find like-minded competitors is a sales play so that you can prospect them. They knew that we were going to prospect their competitors afterwards, and they were fine by that. And that gave me 10 social proofs, 10 logos for my future website. And it was a really smart thing to do.
This was in the beginning of
right
Sales
at the very
for Life, or this was after
right
the
Sales
first
Sales for Life.
Yeah.
So the first 6 months, Sales for Life's revenue stream was not social selling training because it was zero.
Wow.
My first paid customer was a company in Toronto called Vision Critical, market research firm, hundreds of sales reps around the world. They paid me a whopping $2,500, which is, now is 10 minutes of my speaking fee on stage, right? So it's crazy to look back at it, thinking of it now, but for $2,500, that kicked off a multi-million-dollar business because I did those things up front. Now, if I were to aggregate all my failures, and if you start a business, and this is specifically your first-time CEO, you will have way more strikeouts and failures than you will have successes. All you need to do is get on base a couple times and have maybe like 1 or 2 home runs, and boom, like your business explodes. But you will have an endless supply of strikeouts along the journey. So along that journey, I would say for me, my biggest failure was not understanding benchmarks and having strong financial acumen. Now, let me explain that. Along the journey, I tried to pivot and change Sales for Life. I tried to change the sales industry, at the same time, try to create some sort of unique model for professional services and training delivery. Trying to do those two things at the same time was nearly impossible. Looking back in time, I should have better understood that my industry has very set benchmarks. Compounded annual growth rate at a certain clip, earnings or EBITDA returns at a certain clip that should be compounded, gross margins. I should have known these things. I should have known cost of customer acquisition, lifetime value. I didn't know any of that.
And you're saying more how your buyers, your market, how they're calculating, how they would calculate success for themselves.
Exactly. Understand what creates enterprise value in a business and adhere to those benchmarks up front.
And I've seen you do that well in
I
your
do that
marketing too.
intentionally now. I
Yeah.
didn't understand it then. And
Yeah.
so what that caused my business to do was pivot and change. My pricing was like, I didn't know that there is a certain way to grow a professional services firm, a human capital intensive business. At the same time, though, I'm disrupting the sales training industry with unique IP. I should have focused on all of my change at changing the IP and adhered to the models of enterprise value creation that is set forth for Sales for Life. Now I know I've got to adhere to the rule of 40. I need to create 20% compounded growth every year at 20% EBITDA. I know that I need to have gross margins over a certain percentage. And my goal now is just to break all of those benchmarks.
So setting very specific, instead of just kind of aimlessly wandering around how you're building your business, very specific benchmarks, understanding and calculating. And this applies too, I think, for the folks that you're coaching too, and how they're selling is they probably
Works
are
the exact same way.
most of them are doing a horrible job at calculating that. How do you teach others to get good at that?
Yeah, well, and in fact, so our training is for sales professionals, specifically global enterprise, global mid-market companies have hundreds or thousands of sellers. Our courseware woven into the fabric of both the learning program and the certification process is treating every seller as if they were the CEO of their territory. Their territory could be geographically focused, could be verticalized, could be a set of named accounts. But their responsibility is they all have to build their own business plan, build a total addressable market. They have to select and prioritize accounts objectively, plan those accounts, engage and activate those accounts and create opportunities. Then they have to defend a business plan, a business case in video format to their chief revenue officer. So what we've done is we've interwoven entrepreneurship into sales and teach sellers how to treat their territory like it's a business. And there are benchmarks, just like anything else, that they need to adhere to become successful.
That's interesting. I like that perspective, getting them to think of it. And same with any department, marketing, IT is, you don't have to
You're the
start your
CEO
own
of that
business.
department.
Yeah, I think so many people and people watching this right now too is like thinking they have to go start their own business, invest their own capital to be an entrepreneur, but there's such a thing as intrapreneurship and
100%.
actually building a business within a business. And it seems though too that you do that very well within your own company as well. Talk about that as well. What are some steps you do to incentivize, empower your own team to be intrapreneurs?
Well, the biggest one for us that I'm working on now is clarity, communication, and objectivity. And so we just migrated our entire business to an ERP platform called Zoho One. And so that means we moved QuickBooks to Zoho, HubSpot CRM into Zoho, marketing into Zoho, everything, project plans, the whole thing. If you've ever read a book called Rocket Fuel talks about level 10 meetings, and we are creating a KPI dashboard every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Our company, which we have a global organization, all come together, and we look at those 20 KPIs, and those 20 KPIs are all the way from leads and subscribers to close rates and wins, to facilitator optimization rates on how much human horsepower we're putting against delivery, to churn rates, to working capital, and DSO, which is days sales outstanding, of how fast your customers are paying your bills.
It's like open book management.
Yeah, and so our whole company, no matter your role, see what's in the bank account, how we're doing, every KPI of the business. Then every half an hour after that, we have a departmental meeting. So myself and my two business partners drop into that departmental meetings call, say it's the marketing team. They have sub KPIs, almost like rocks and milestones that are measured. And so that those are more leading indicators to the ultimate executive dashboard. And through that transparency, everyone on the team starts to understand a little bit more about entrepreneurship, the journey that we're on, why we're doing this, how a lead connects to a sale, connects to success, connects to paying the bills, connects to the evolution of deploying new working capital back into the business. And there's no illusion that every teammate in my team, they're not all going to be entrepreneurs, but they need to understand the mindset of the entrepreneur and how this all connects. And we just use this through transparency.
It's amazing. What have you noticed as a byproduct of setting yourself up that way?
Everybody starts to better understand value drivers for their own department. So before, as an example, a marketer, let's use a marketer. A marketer will create content because they were measured on content. How many units of blogs they could create, how many subscribers they can get into a database. But the more that they see that those are just leading indicators to something that is meaningful for a company, sales qualified leads turning into sales, those sales keeping a customer longer because marketing journey is helping customers learn more to retain and reduce churn. They start to realize that the things that they used to think were important were just leading indicators. They were just
Vanity.
objectives. They were just objectives to a milestone. They were like steps, mile markers on the way to a journey.
Yep.
And they better understand that I'm doing this because it's going to lead to that.
I've heard a lot of business owners like you making that shift. I think it's part of even what we were talking about before, like the veil is unlifted. There's no mystery man behind the curtain anymore. Like I'm doing this thing from a hotel room today, and it's just like total transparency in the world. And I think there's pros and cons, but I think it's definitely good for the team and employees as well moving forward. No longer set up like companies. It's a community of entrepreneurs with their own unique specialty and kind of plug into the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you need people, in a business of my size of 20 teammates, you need people that can do many things at the same time. And we've seen it. It's unfortunate that those that come from enterprise companies into an entrepreneurial business, they don't do very well because they were, and this is a tongue in cheek, but person A's responsibility was pressing the letter A through L on the keyboard, and there was somebody else that did M through Z. They just don't see how it all connects. But number two is they were so used to delegating. Like big companies solve problems through outsourcing. I mean, that's why my company exists. But in a company of my size, you can't outsource. You actually have to write that product brief. You actually have to make that call. So they just don't do a very good job because they're not used to digging ditches. And so I almost don't remember where we're going with that, but that's just a gut feel.
Shifting a little bit, I want to dive into strategy that people can really take away from this. And social selling is this big, even still now to this day, since you really coined the term, has evolved, it's changed, it's shifted. There's confusion about what it actually is. So in your opinion, first off, what is social selling? How has social selling evolved even now with all the changes, pandemic, and the world that we live in today?
Yeah, all it's done is accelerated the value proposition of meeting the customer along the journey that they're taking. So this is the important piece, the mindset. Whether you like it or not, your customer's learning with or without you. They're consuming insights online. They're reaching out to their peer-to-peer network, but they themselves are leaving digital breadcrumbs all over the internet, helping you if you want to be Sherlock Holmes, trying to figure out all these pieces that turn into a puzzle. In doing so, you have the ability to use signals, and inside signals, there are many forms. There's relationship signals, time-based signals, product usage-based signals, content consumption signals, competitive intelligence signals. You want to be able to leverage all of those to make informed decisions of where you spend your time. Do I focus on this account today because objectively I see these signals have a compelling reason for a conversation or not? And so that all that social selling is digitizing or applying social to collect these signals help you make informed decisions, and engage the customer in a bold and different way than you were before. It's just selling. It's just amplifying the sales process through digital means.
And it touches, in your opinion, social selling touches much more on the top of the pipeline or middle of the pipeline, or where in that buyer's journey?
It touches all formats of the buyer's journey. Our focus of this world of social selling is self-generated pipeline at scale. So what we're teaching BDRs, AEs, and CSMs how to generate pipeline via the delta or gap that is not being supplied by marketing. So that's for the net new sellers. And for those with existing accounts, too many CSMs don't see themselves as sellers, but you are. You have to protect a company from churning, or you have to upsell them, or you have to cross-sell them. And so you are not, status quo is not good enough. And so since you are either protecting from churn or upsell or cross-sell, you're selling. And so you need to use these tools and these process strategies to get you there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of CEOs kind of turn a blind eye when they hear about this social selling, because a lot of sellers jump on that and say, I'll never have to make a phone call again, or I'm never going to send a cold email again. What's your, because I think all the social selling experts out there tout different stuff like stop cold calling people, and all this good stuff. What's your perspective on that? And even the traditional channels, face-to-face meetings, how does social selling play a role in that?
If I were a CEO, CEO's number one role is deployment of capital, right? Most capital is deployed in the form of human capital or cash for these initiatives. It would be as asinine as me saying, by the way, never take VC money or never take on debt. As a CEO, you're like, I need optionality. Social selling is just optionality for prospecting, okay? And so by understanding that, your sellers need to be omni-channel, and they may apply social, and prospecting is a left and a right brain motion. There's research and there's engagement. And so they're either using social channels for research or engagement. Not every account do you need to use it for research and or engagement, but I'm using it every deal, every day. I'm just trying to find ways to use it in my application. Anyone that tells you otherwise, to not call, not email, work it backwards and ask yourself, if somebody told you to never take VC money or never take on debt in a business, is that wise advice? And that's not wise advice. And that's the difference between, and humbly speaking, that's the difference between social selling guru trainers and companies that are enabling Microsoft, Oracle, and Intel around the planet. And that's what we recognize, is that the problem, the pervasive problem, is self-generated pipeline. That's the problem you want to solve for. 50% of sellers make quota, 50% of sellers don't. How do we up level so more sellers make quota? To get us there, social selling is one mechanism to accelerate that problem, to accelerate towards solving that problem.
And not be totally codependent on marketing, because it's kind of, exactly, it serves a different function. Yeah.
Very few complex B2B organizations have enough demand gen waterfall from marketing to meet sales quota attainment. So there's a delta, and inside that gap or delta, the seller needs to fill that, and they need to know the skills to do so.
So of the 250 plus 100,000 sales and marketers that you've mentored and coached and trained over the years, what are a couple of the key things that have made the difference between those who are having reliable, consistent success with the strategy, and those who are not?
It's actually, it's very quite simple. So learning is the ultimate leading indicator to success. So it goes learning, application to results. There are sellers that they walk into training with the mindset, this is a burden, this is taking up my time. And I want to plant a seed in everybody's mind. To take one day out of your year to set up 249 other days, which is the number of business days in a year, you're crazy to think that stepping one step back is a bad idea to not go 5 steps forward. So the best sellers understand that just like companies, Bill Gates and Microsoft used to take 1 week off. The executive board used to go 1 week off into a cabin, build their plan. They took a step back to go 3 steps forward. Entrepreneurs do the same thing. So the mindset is, I'm going to learn new skills. Then it comes to the skill set of application. I'm going to take what I learned. It doesn't mean I have to apply all of them, but I'm going to take some of those skills and actually execute day in, day out. I make a business plan and I adhere to that consistently. And by doing it consistently over time, it's just like hitting your quarterly rocks as an entrepreneur. You wake up one day and you started a business. Our first year revenue was $390,000. You wake up one day and you're doing $3 million. You don't feel like you changed much. All that you did was consistent, quarter over quarter, year after year, and then it starts to compound, right? And that's the difference between sellers that are successful and not.
So one thing is you're in another little pivot here. You've written 2 books now. I've seen you speak on stages like Grant Cardone's 10X Growth Con, and had some monster opportunities from that. I'm also, looking at working on my first book, and actively looking to build my personal brand in a way that you have, and use you actively as a model for that too. What steps have you taken? What have you done uniquely? Was a book kind of like a launching pad for that, and what gave you the opportunities? Or were you kind of building your brand before that? Speak on that just real quick.
Yeah, the book was a mile marker along a journey of brand building that really started and stopped with blogs. I would say the thing that got me to that position, that got me to speaking opportunities, was that every day I wrote a blog or made a video blog for years. And that turned into videos that go on LinkedIn, that turned into podcasts and webinars and so forth. But it kind of comes back to, just like anything in sales, I set forth a plan and I was consistent with it. I didn't give up when only 15 people were listening, right? You just keep doing it. And eventually there'll be a niche subset of the world that cares about the topic you're discussing.
Yeah. How did you get the keynote opportunity on 10X?
10X was because I had spoken at various events of similar size. It'd be like a Thomson Reuters event or an Oracle event. Mm-hmm. And Jared, one of the teammates who works with Grant, had seen me. I went to Miami. I went to their office. I did a podcast with Grant. And you can still find it on the internet. I was wearing a pink blazer. We had a great time. And Grant said, "Hey, I'm putting on this conference, and we want to diversify the content, not just to entrepreneurs, but have a sales focus to it. I want to put you on stage there. Count me in. I'm coming to Miami."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, man. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that and mentoring us through it today. And also just as a, anything else that's really top of mind for you that would be actionable, helpful for the audience of marketers and business development leaders listening.
Yeah, for us, we are transitioning in the fall. We released something called the Growth System. So we're migrating just from social selling and digital selling training to the Growth System, which is every piece of IP for sales leaders and sellers that we have in a learning library. So learning, and then it's turned into intelligence. So we've trained 250,000 sellers around the world, and we've been tracking for years the data points of who they're targeting, what sales play did they use, what medium did they use. So that intelligence has allowed us to mine signals. We have a managed service that can mine signals on behalf of companies that ultimately lead to application and workflow applications. So that whole together is what creates prospecting at scale. So that's ultimately what we do.
Cool. Awesome. Well, how can people find you, get into contact with anything, any links, anything you want to shout out?
I would say connect with me on LinkedIn is the easiest thing to do. And then you'll get our news feed and you'll know everything that's going on with Sales for Life.
Follow the man on LinkedIn. Jamie, appreciate you as always, man. Thank you again for the time. And all of you listening, don't forget, subscribe, leave a review. As always, we'll see you on the next one. And cut.